Hello everybody, welcome back to the Testing Grounds. We have an ultra spicy video for you today because either I have screwed something up or I'm about to upend everything that we understand about the way that ice makers currently work. So, to give you a little bit of context, when the ice makers first came out, they were a much more powerful machine than they are now. Brothgar, who is another YouTuber, did some testing on them and found that they deleted 100 kDTUs per second, which is a pretty insane amount of heat for a building that really only requires a little bit of duplicate labor and power. And so they seemed like not just a really strong early to mid-game cooling solution, but perhaps a cooling solution you'd use for pretty much the entirety of the game. I mean, eventually I suppose you would care more about getting that duplicate labor and you would switch to maybe steam turbines or something like that. But if one ice maker can produce about as much cooling as 1/5 of a steam turbine, that seemed pretty strong. So there was an expectation that the building was going to be nerfed, and it was. Clay came in with some patch notes and said we are changing the ice maker so that it deletes only 1/5 as much heat from the water as it does before. But those patch notes were a little ambiguous because at the same time they increased the base heat generation rate of the ice maker, right? So it says right now that it's producing 1600 DTUs per second. This used to be something on the order of like 4 or 1, something like that. And so there was some disagreement about how much the ice maker deleted. Some people said, well, they said it deletes 1/5 as much heat as before. Brothgar estimated it to delete 100 kDTUs, so therefore it deletes 20 kDTUs now. Other people looked around and said, no, the ice maker, they raised the heat production rate on it, so actually what's happening is that it's only deleting 4 kDTUs now. And there was a little bit of disagreement, but both sides had a sort of consensus. The ice maker still deletes heat, right? Because the patch notes talked about the ice maker deleting heat, just less of it. And so these seem to be reasonable things, and those were kind of the assumptions that we used going forward. And when I started my Let's Play, which was very heavy on using ice makers to cool things down, I kind of went a little bit conservative and assumed that it was only going to be around 4 kDTUs. I was hoping for 20 kDTUs, but I figured it was going to be somewhere in the area of that. Then I got a comment on my Let's Play that says that ice makers don't actually delete heat, they merely move it around, which seemed not in keeping at all with what the patch notes said. And I was tempted to just say, well, here are the patch notes. I mean, they seem to suggest otherwise. But then I realized, well, Brothgar hasn't released an updated version of his ice machine testing. Why don't I just make a little video kind of trying to see how effective they are? Seems pretty simple, right? And so that's what we have here today. And unfortunately, the results are very outside of what I expected. And I've done this test a number of times in a few different environments. So, I mean, the basic testing environment has remained the same, and maybe there's a problem with that. But let's get into the results. So, for roughly 250 seconds, I've been running this ice maker. I have fed 70-degree water into it. It is at 69.9 degrees Celsius, roughly 70 degrees. And we have the water cooled down to roughly 30 degrees, or 29.9. So a 40-degree difference. 30 kilograms of water with a 4.179 specific heat capacity that is changed by 40 degrees Celsius over 250 seconds. This is roughly 20 kDTUs of cooling that has been applied to this water. So it seems, just on first blush, that the 4 kDTU people are correct, because if this building is producing 16 kDTUs per second, and this water has only been cooled down by 20 kDTUs per second, then 4 was the correct answer. Here's the thing though. If I go to the properties of this ice maker, I've made it out of wolframite, which has a fairly low specific heat capacity, but this is still a 400 kilogram machine. We were only cooling down 30 kilograms of water. This is a 400 kilogram machine, and its temperature in the course of cooling down that water has risen to 300 degrees Celsius. Pretty extreme. And if you do the math, we find that actually this heat generation rate, which says 16 kDTUs per second, is incorrect. That the heat production rate has actually been 60 kDTUs per second. 400 kilograms, that's 400,000 grams, with a 280 degree temperature difference, because this building started off at 20 degrees Celsius, and a specific heat capacity of 0.134 means this building has had 60 kDTUs per second of heat put into it. And over the 250 seconds, that is 15 million DTUs, whereas only 5 million DTUs have been removed from this water. So the ice maker doesn't delete 20 kDTUs of heat. It doesn't delete 4 kDTUs of heat. No, on the net, it generates 40 kDTUs of heat per second. That is an incredibly different machine. This is not something that generates net cooling, as I understand it. And again, we can look at the testing environment. I have this all in a vacuum. There is no heat transfer to these insulated tiles, which are at 20 degrees Celsius. This water is, of course, still at the same temperature as when I spawned it. There's been no heat transfer to this pitcher pump. There's been no heat transfer to any of the wires connecting any of this. All of the heat generated by this ice maker has been dumped into the ice maker itself. It started off at 20 degrees Celsius. It has gone up by 280 degrees just in the course of cooling down 30 kilograms of water by 40 degrees Celsius. So I don't know what to say. Ice makers do not work as anyone expected them. I don't see anybody out there saying ice makers produce 40 kDTUs of heat on the net. The lowest estimates I've seen are the people who claim that it only moves heat, and even that is saying implicitly that it is a heat neutral building, right? That it takes all the heat that it generates and dumps it into the ice. And in fact, even if we said it was a heat neutral building plus some heat production, that heat production is not 16 kDTUs, right? That heat production is 40 kDTUs. We're basically because this building is absorbing 60 kDTUs per second of heat to remove 20 kDTUs per second from the water. I don't know. I mean, I am really hoping that someone comes along and proves me wrong here, because my Let's Play on maximum difficulty settings really relies upon ice machines to be an effective cooling solution. That's been our entire heat management solution so far, and oh boy, if that is not the case, then this machine, honestly, if this machine works as I think it works given this testing, it is complete garbage. You would never want to build one of these. They are totally useless. To just accept a 40 kDTU heat generator in your base is insane. Okay, well, that's it for this episode. Hopefully I'll post this to Reddit and someone will prove me wrong, but otherwise, oh boy, ice makers are just absolute garbage. Never build them. My God, what have I done to my Let's Play? Alright, I'm going to catch you guys next time.